Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. We are seeing Bitcoin flashing a reversal pattern for the first time in almost a year. Every time Bitcoin has done this, it's marked a reversal point inside of our cycle, and it's marked the very best buy opportunity that we have before that next breakout starts. We're also going to be jumping into the altcoin total market cap because the altcoins are doing something that we haven't seen since 2017. All of the charts are accumulating in the most bullish way possible, and I have the most important charts that we can be looking at, analyzing, that's going to give us the best strategic advantage over the rest of the market to profit. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. If you find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to see anything that I'm doing with my portfolio long term, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty everybody, here we are to start off today's video. We are going to be jumping into the price of Bitcoin. We are going to be mapping out one of the best reversal patterns that we've ever seen inside of the market. Bitcoin is now flashing it for the first time in almost a year, and I really do think that this is going to be the early indication that the reversal is coming soon. We're also going to be jumping over, taking a look at the total altcoin market cap, because we are still once again following almost the exact same correlations from this cycle all the way back into our first one of 2016 and 17. As you guys know, that was the biggest cycle. Seeing all of the same correlations in the price structure today is very bullish, gives me very optimistic about the long term for crypto, and this cycle is just barely getting started as a whole. Looking over here, we're going to finish up by taking a look at ETH BTC, because this is on the verge of a breakout, and it's very important that we see this thing hold true. Guys, as we're jumping into the price of Bitcoin, I noticed something that I wanted to share with you guys, because I truly think that this is going to be the most important thing to look for when it comes time for talking reversals in the market. With Bitcoin, one of the most obvious patterns that we have inside of our cycles is analyzing the bullish divergence that it has experienced on side of the daily RSI. This has marked every single major low in our market over the last year and a half of our bull run. We can go all the way back here to the very bottom of our cycle low when we had that FTX collapse, and we can see that this is where we flashed bullish divergence. We had a higher high on the RSI, and we were making at least a lower low, partially a lower low. It's not much of a lower low. It's kind of just like sitting on top of support. So we ended up getting that bullish divergence confirmation here, and this was the exact low of our cycle. The next time it flashed was when we broke out of 25K and we retested it as support. In fact, we had two different reactions on this level, and each time we ended up retesting this 25K support, we got bullish divergence that formed. We saw a higher high on the RSI and a lower low in price. Over here, we saw kind of the same thing, a lower low in price, a higher high on the RSI, and then that was the exact reversal point. Had you have just simply followed when we actually formed these bullish divergences inside of the daily RSI for Bitcoin, you would have nailed every single one of our most important local bottoms. You know, if we come over to where we're at, we literally haven't had one in, a good period of time. If we're looking at a date from the last bullish divergence we had, we're almost exactly 1 year from that last pattern happening. So when we're looking at the current price structure, we saw an absolutely massive bullish divergence. In fact, this is the biggest bullish divergence that we have had, dating all the way back into our last bull run. In fact, this is probably the biggest bullish divergence I've personally seen inside of Bitcoin. We can see that we made a higher high on the RSI, and we made this absolutely massive capitulation in price. This big lower low. This was also what temporarily flushed below that range low support at about 56, 57K. And this completed that Wyckoff accumulation that we were watching for. The Wyckoff has been the main accumulation pattern that we've been watching for, and so to see this kind of spilling right at that main support, following along with that final flush inside of a Wyckoff schematic, and then for us to also be getting bullish divergence that's forming at the end of that sort of capitulation, it really gives me a lot of confidence that Bitcoin is going to be reversing, just because I'm telling you guys, we don't see this big of a bullish divergence in Bitcoin very often, and once they do form, it's never once marked a point before we've dropped lower. It's always marked a local bottom in every single one of these consolidations. So when we're watching Bitcoin today, don't get me wrong, we can still end up chopping around here before we ever end up getting that big breakout, but it's not changing anything. With this amount of bullish divergence, it shows that there's a significant amount of seller exhaustion, and with us having such a big false breakdown, Technically, we didn't even break down from that range. If we go to a weekly time frame, remove our drawing tools real quick, we can see that, we didn't technically break down from that range. We're still holding it as support. So as of now, nothing has really changed in the market structure. Having this big bullish divergence at the end of what looks to be a Wyckoff gives me a lot of confidence that that Wyckoff is going to hold through. Even if we chop around here for a little bit, I think that this is going to be the early reversal before we make that next big breakout into new all-time highs. Now, coming over here, I wanted to take some time to map out the altcoin total market cap, because what we're seeing is the exact same correlation in price as the last cycle, and what I should say, really our first altcoin cycle dating all the way back to like 2014, 2015, and 2016. Because if you guys remember, well, probably you guys don't remember, but this is the structure that we made all the way back in our first altcoin cycle. When altcoins first got added, we saw this little pump, and then this was kind of our first bear market consolidation that we ever went through. And what I find interesting is that the altcoins today are following almost this exact same accumulation pattern. And this is something that we typically follow each and every one of our cycles. We have our bear market, lower lows, lower highs, all the way through, until eventually we end up breaking out of that descending resistance. We come all the way back up to the range highs, and then this has been kind of the classic accumulation pattern that you're going to see. You have a low, you have a range high, retest that low, have one more false breakout of the range, and then we have this final sort of capitulation. This is what is known as a Wyckoff accumulation. And if we actually come over here and look at this Wyckoff schematic, you're going to have a few different variances of this. The one with Bitcoin, we're looking at this third low is ending up being our spring-loaded bounce. But this is an accumulation schematic. So what you're going to see is sometimes you'll make two lower lows, and then it's kind of at that third one, it rounds out in the mid-range before it breaks out. This is more of a reaccumulation schematic, and we can see that this is exactly what we followed inside of this pattern, where we had the low, the high, the secondary low, and then this third one actually maintains higher highs inside of the mid-range before we start that next breakout. And this is exactly what has happened every single one of our cycles. Even coming into the 2018 bear market that we experienced over in here, it followed true with the same correlation, where lower lows, lower highs, all the way down until we finally broke out. And we followed the same pattern where we have a low, lower high, we come back down to retest that, another false breakout here, and then this is our third spring-loaded bounce. Notice how this one never made kind of a lower low. We always maintain higher highs throughout that consolidation. This is a Wyckoff schematic number 2, and we can see that right here because we never made a third lower low. It just kind of reconsolidated before that breakout. Whereas many of the other ones we're going to see end up making kind of this third peak low right here, and that's why we're going to see different variations of these patterns. Sometimes they can be topping patterns, sometimes they can be reversing patterns, but as of now, Bitcoin seems to be following this normal schematic, whereas the total market cap is also kind of following it in the 2018 cycle. However, in the first cycle, we followed it a little bit differently, following a schematic too. Now, the big thing I want you guys to be aware of is we've already broken out of that bear market bottom. We went into that new all-time high, and in my opinion, all we're doing right now is just reconsolidating on top of those prior all-time highs as new support in the same ways that we did over here in that beginning stages of 2016 and 2017. Because it was once we got outside of that long-term all-time high, it was really where we started to see a lot more markup, and that was the biggest cycle that we ever saw. Absolutely massive, and it was because we were setting up for a much more parabolic cycle. I believe it takes more time to move that same amount of money in the same way. So in our last cycle, all we ended up doing was just making that first little breakout above our prior all-time highs, and it's just taken more time to get that same type of accumulation before we can get a push into new all-time highs. I still firmly believe that this cycle is going to be following a lot of those same similarities as the 2017 cycle, because our cycle is lining up in the same ways that it did, where all we've really done is consolidated right on top of that prior all-time high. And now it's looking like this is going to be the moment of truth before we finally start that next big breakout into price discovery. So kind of what I'm leaning towards is our next cycle is going to be this right here. Obviously, it's going to be taking more time to get that upside. I don't think the ROI is obviously going to be the same because we have diminishing returns over time. It takes more money to move that type of volume, but the more money that's in, the less the volatility is. And so we should expect that the gains aren't going to be quite as significant. We're talking the total market cap being like 50 to 100 million right here, whereas now we have multiple altcoins in the tens of billions. So it's obviously going to be different. There's not going to be the same exact type of ROI in the high cap cryptos. Not every single thing is going to just absolutely outperform, but I have a lot of confidence that this cycle will be very similar in the ways of just having a lot more euphoria. Because this is going to be that first move into true price discovery, there's going to be a lot more people rushing to buy speculative money We have the institutions here that are going to be driving up the native chain assets being around these ETFs, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and whichever altcoins also kind of come through with that. So if we're looking at that kind of happening, I think that this is going to be a very retail driven cycle, and everything is kind of lining up for that. Coming over here and looking at ETH BTC, if we're going to end up seeing altcoins outperform, it's really centered around when this breaks out, because if we're going to see the altcoins outperform, it's always started by the lead altcoin, which is obviously Ethereum. Because Ethereum is the only one to have this ETF approval, it's the first altcoin to get this, it just furthers the need for us to watch what happens with the ETH BTC pair, because if this is breaking out, it shows that the bigger picture shift into the altcoin market is taking place. Now, in my last update, we were pretty much just holding right here at this descending resistance, and we were kind of wondering if it was going to truly break out. Now, we have been unable to break out up to this point, but in the shorter time frames, we are getting a nice buyback. We are still just right there at that major downtrending resistance. Technically, we actually ended up making a false breakout and peak back below here, but with us still maintaining horizontal support, we did flip that prior resistance level, reclaimed it as new support, and so the tighter that we hug to this descending resistance, the weaker that level is going to get. We're pretty much right there at that breakout. So assuming that we're going to continue to see the market's bottom, maybe just consolidate here at this support, we could still chop for another month inside of Bitcoin, inside of Ethereum, but as long as ETH is outperforming Bitcoin, and as long as we can get back outside of this downtrending resistance, I think that we're setting ourselves up for our first major reversal point, and this is going to be where we see that altcoin shift taking place. It's what we're going to end up seeing is with ETH outperforming Bitcoin, we're going to see a lot of the different opportunities built on the Ethereum blockchain taking off. We have liquid staking, we have DPIN, we have DeFi protocols, NFTs, we have AI, we have a number of these different narratives that are for sure going to be taking off in a big way. And now comes the opportune time where we need to be paying attention to what is going on inside of the Ethereum chain. What are the most important projects here? Because that's where we need to place our bets. You know, we've seen a number of these layer 2s outperforming as the Ethereum ETF has been approved. We've seen those starting to front run, and what it means is that people are beginning to speculate around Ethereum. They are bullish on Ethereum. They know it's going to take off because of the ETF approvals. So now people are like, well, you know, ETH is expensive. I need to go and buy the big thing on ETH that is going to outperform everything. So we've seen Lido DAO, the liquid staking tokens have been really doing well. Arbitrum, Optimism, some of the other layer 2s in the market have also been doing really well. And I think that this is an early sign that if we're right here at the verge of breaking out, now we really need to do our part by finding those narratives now before they take off. Understanding which ones are going to see a lot of adoption, which ones could actually see a lot of institutional development and involvement. For me, RWAs, real world assets, are a great opportunity. Liquid staking, like I just said, with LDO. There's a number of these different tokens that are actually building on Ethereum, fixing Ethereum. And because Ethereum is, you know, slow, it's got the network congestion issues, and because it has this ETF approval, you know, it really just goes to show that we're still going to be consolidating our bets inside of Ethereum, regardless of how it works. You know, we're in the dial-up days of the internet, and this is just blockchain today. And so I do think that the layer 2s and the projects that are looking to scale Ethereum are going to do really, really well. And it's important that we're paying attention to this, because on the higher time frames, this is going to be the first cycle that we've ever seen ETH BTC break out into a new all-time high since that 2017 bull run. You know, we're kind of right there at that last moment of time, because we have not only our short-term descending resistance that we're getting ready to break from, but once we break from that, we're really not that far off from our long-term downtrend as well. And once that's broken, that's really where I think that we see a lot of big price action like this, where things just get really blown out of proportion in big ways. You know, we're looking at this cycle, or what I should say, I'm looking for this cycle for Ethereum to be peaking at around 0.3. And, you know, it's insane that we could see Ethereum worth a third of a Bitcoin potentially in this next move. Keep in mind that the way that that's going to happen is going to be unique in its own way. Because keep in mind, guys, that Ethereum technically peaked at $1,450 right here. So the real peak of our cycle actually happened earlier in the summer. So it was in that beginning stages when Bitcoin broke out into a new all-time high. I'll just share with you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. It was in that first big breakout into price discovery right here, where we went from $900 prior all-time highs into a new all-time high, and we pulled back. It was in these big moves that we saw the majority of the altcoin profit roll in, at least in that 2017 cycle. And so the Ethereum BTC pair ended up peaking during that hype. Even though ETH ended up going into a brand new all-time high against the dollar, it ended up making a lower high against Bitcoin. So we have to be aware that whenever the pump comes in, it can happen a lot quicker than people believe or expect. And that's kind of the way that a lot of these Bitcoin pairs will outperform. You know, a good example to actually look at would be the Dogecoin Bitcoin chart, because this is one that kind of follows along, you know, with what I'm talking about, where Bitcoin pairs can kind of just range and go sideways, not really do a whole lot. Dogecoin just used to pump inside of this channel constantly. And then one day out of the blue, they just kind of blow up once the real outperformance comes. And so, you know, Bitcoin in and of itself might just be reconsolidating. It might not be doing a whole lot, but Ethereum might be breaking out, and that will cause this chart to really break out. So there's going to be differences in the cycle where there's shifting points, where Bitcoin can already be on a big run, and then it might pull back. And during that pullback, altcoins break out. That's where we historically have seen a lot of the Bitcoin pairs breaking out, is anytime Bitcoin does a pullback and then altcoins randomly break out from that. I literally have not seen that happen since the 2017 cycle, because our last cycle just wasn't very retail driven. There wasn't hardly any altcoin hype going on aside from a few key narratives. And when we're talking about the biggest OG altcoin of the whole cycle making a lower high, along with all of the other altcoins from that 2017 cycle, it just tells me that we just didn't have that same level of. So if we're talking about this being the first cycle that we're going into a brand new all-time high, Bitcoin pairs are actually outperforming, that's where we're going to see the true alt season we've always talked about. Because realistically, guys, we haven't seen true alt season in a long time. Alt season is only when the Bitcoin pairs are actually outperforming, and that's something we didn't get a heck of a lot of in the last cycle. They were all making these lower highs. So we're going to keep you guys updated as we're getting closer to the breakout. I'll keep you guys informed around when that happens. But this is a cycle we just want to be prepared for, guys. You know, every chart that we're looking at is showing all of the big buy signals that we've been waiting for. We're seeing the institutions here accumulating. Now it comes retail. All of the charts are pretty much just lining up that this is going to be the biggest cycle that we've ever seen. So guys, if you found value in this video, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. If you want to see anything that we're buying, selling, trading over this cycle, anything that we're buying in the dip right now, I've been accumulating a number of different meme coins, expecting these ETFs are going to balloon the prices of them insanely high. So if you guys want to see anything that I'm buying, we've got a number of new signals that I've been posting in the Discord that I'd love to have you guys a part of. Links are in the description. Go ahead and sign up on my website for anybody that wants to get access. With that being said, guys, I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm super excited to see where this cycle is going to take us, because I know you guys are about to make a lot of money. All we got to do is get out of our own way, hold the length of the trend, and I think that we're going to do really, really well for ourselves. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.